Volunteering in one of the world's poorest countries has helped me better understand poverty. In 2014, I went to Nepal as a volunteer. I taught Mandarin to kids at a primary school. The school offers affordable education to the local community, including members of the lowest caste and orphans in that area. Traveling in Kathmandu, I was shocked by the views from the streets. Bumpy roads were covered with dirt. Shabby shelters were scattered across the streets, and ATMs were hard to find. Homeless people were given free meals. They squatted on the ground and ate with their fingers. Kids chased tourists down the streets to sell snacks. Women were carrying containers to get clean water. The city had a shortage of well-functioning toilets. Nepal is a country that lacks basic infrastructure and education. According to the United Nations, in 2014, 15% of the population had no access to drinking water and 38% had no access to toilets. Nepal's official data shows that in 2011, 34% of people aged 5 and above are illiterate. As a volunteer, I felt powerless. I was unsure if I made a difference to local people's lives. A fellow volunteer was about to have her birthday, so we brought a cake to an orphanage to celebrate together. We cut a cake and gave each kid a piece of it. The kids stared at their plates, waiting silently and licking their lips until everyone got one. A social worker there said, "This is the first time they eat a birthday cake. Once the volunteers left, their lives returned to normal." Individual efforts are not enough to end poverty. Poverty eradication requires a transparent and a sound system at national and local level. Nepal has received financial support from other nations over the years, but nobody knows whether the money was given to those in need. In 2017, Nepal was ranked as the third most corrupt country in South Asia. The widespread corruption makes it harder to end poverty. After I came back from Nepal, some questions lingered on my mind. What's the cause of global poverty? Why do people stay poor? Some self-help gurus peddle the idea that people are rich because they work hard and deserve to be wealthy, while people are poor because they are lazy, short-sighted, and incapable of self-control. Sadly, a lot of people buy into this idea. Poverty is not a personal choice, but to some extent due to social structure. In the book Poor Economics, MIT economist Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo explain that the poor are equally capable of rational analysis and self-control as the general population. But they have no way to escape from the poverty trap without external intervention. They pointed out that systems in many developing countries make it hard for the poor to change their lives. For instance, why don't the poor save? One main reason is a lack of access to bank accounts. Banks don't like managing small accounts because the interest they received from those accounts can't cover administration fees. So the poor rely on informal loans, which charge much higher interest rates. With debt burden, the poor can't break the cycle of poverty. Moreover, being under financial stress, the poor are more likely to make bad decisions. A study published in Science shows that poverty harms cognitive function. For the poor, solving a difficult financial problem produces a mental strain comparable to a loss of 13 IQ points. In another study, Princeton economist Dean Spears found that poverty depletes cognitive control by making economic decision-making more difficult. These studies prove that living in poverty can lead to bad decision-making. It can worsen poverty and create a vicious cycle. Why should we help the poor? Because poverty affects us all. all of society pays the price. Citizens feel less safe on the streets, business find fewer good workers, healthcare systems spend more on treating preventable illnesses. Poverty reduces economic productivity and increases social tensions. Also, poverty might worsen issues like new diseases, extreme weather events, and international migration. So countries need to work together to fight against global poverty. Luckily, the number of people living in poverty around the world is declining. According to the World Bank, the global poverty rate dropped from 28% in 2000 to 9% in 2017. That means nearly 700 million people live on $1.9 or less a day. But the poverty rate rose in 2020 for the first time in 2 decades due to the pandemic. The United Nations projected the rate to be 7% in 2030. David Hume, professor of development studies at the University of Manchester, argued that wealthier nations should help the poor because this brings mutual benefit.
If we live in a world which is extremely unjust, in which there are increasing levels of inequality, then you can't actually expect to be moving towards a more secure world, a more stable world. And so if you want the sort of world which you, or perhaps your children or grandchildren, should be living in, then you've actually got to think about what can we do to help poorer people in poorer countries.